Hello, audience. Today we are on chapter 7 of Fathers of Nations. I believe that you've been watching what I've been presenting earlier, and I'm requesting you to just click below and comment. You are also free to share and view this presentation of Fathers of Nations. By now, a lot of people have read this book, and therefore you are free to critique whatever I'll present before you. This chapter is titled Poles of Influence. Why Poles of Influence? You'll get to see the poles within this chapter. The chapter begins as the host president engages in, talking to other presidents who have come to the summit. There is a hierarchy that has to be observed while greeting the president of other nations, and therefore the hierarchy is anchored on based on technology, population, power, and the alliance of whichever nation the president is talking to the president with. There is a refusal to abide by the rules of agreement. Now, the host skips the president and goes on with pleasantries with the president of Nigeria. Why? It's because this president has a country which has the highest population. After Nigeria, he goes on to South Africa because South Africa has high technology in the entire Africa. After the president of South Africa, he goes to the Kenyan president because Kenya is known to have closer unity and, a lot of pleasantries with America. After the president of Kenya, he goes on to the president of Zimbabwe because of the sheer obstinacy. Now, this country once rebuked America and Britain for interfering with its matters, and therefore that's why he chooses to speak to the president of Zimbabwe. When we look at this chapter, we proceed on to the summit that has to be held, and therefore the host goes on to the president of Libya, who has refused to agree with America in its status or proceedings, and goes on with his own affairs without interference. Now, when we look at the thematic concern in this chapter, we realize that we have bad governance and misrule. Why do we have bad governance? Look at Nigeria. Nigeria, on page 101, we are told that Pastor Chamaka was the observer, and therefore he looks at his president as one who does not deserve to be in this summit because he mismanages his country. We also see Professor Kimani, who feels like Kenya has had a problem with the government leaving his daughter, Tuni, to die in an accident which would have been prevented. It was such a delay to have emergency saving Tuni. We also have the theme of dehumanization. Why dehumanization? The president of Zimbabwe is the 5th Brigade to murder hundreds of people in his country. And so that is where Comrade Melusi loses the wife. He ordered the bulldozers to drive out thousands of Zimbabwean people, and the homes were left without people. That is on page 103. If you look at the other themes, we have betrayal. Why betrayal? Engineer Tahir feels like he was betrayed by his own president, who, after struggling so much to be, an engineer in preparation of weapons, he loses his job because the president closes down this company. We also have Libyan situation whereby the insurance of livelihood and economic empowerment is brought down, as shown on page 104. We can also meet the theme of discrimination. Why discrimination? Look at the way the host greets these presidents. He skips other presidents and comes to that of Nigeria, followed by that of South Africa, Kenya, and finally Zimbabwe, without actually greeting others. That is page 102. Now look at character and characterization. If you look at the Gambian president, who is the host, he is a bit discriminative. He skips all other presidents, and based on the poles of influence of power, technology, and all that, he greets only the Nigerian president, who has a lot of people in his country, that of Kenya because of being close to America, that of Zimbabwe because he has some obstinacy, and that of Libya because he once rebuked that of Britain and America. Look at page 100 for that. He's also very proud, and that is why we are told that he had revealed that there is a secret in becoming a president. We also look at him as being social. Why social? He greets other presidents around and has pleasantries with them. We also look at the Kenyan president who is welcoming. He is invited in the summit to visit. He welcomes the host to visit his country and has a short talk with him on page 102. Looking at the Zimbabwean president, we realize that he's quite daring. That is why he had to rebuke America and Britain during the General Assembly of the United States and Nations, something other heads could not do. Look at page 101 for this. He's quite defensive also because he answers many questions before he's asked about the reign of Zimbabwe. For instance, he tells the summit host that in Zimbabwe the economy has been meant before, and that is page 103. If you look at him, he's also cruel, inhuman, and wicked because he placed bulldozers which killed a number of people, including the wife too, Comrade Melusi. He also sent the Zimbabwean 5th Brigade that murdered hundreds of Zimbabweans, as shown on page 103. When we look at the other character, who is the Libyan president, we realize that he is also defiant. Why? He rejected the American ways, and when we see at the bomb that was had to blow the Pan-African World Airlines in Scotland, killing 300 people. He's the one who had brought on the aspect of weapons. But at some time he becomes traitorous, as felt by Tahir. Tahir feels like he was betrayed by his president for closing down the weapon company after this bomb, as shown on page 104. Then we can look at Professor Kimani. Professor Kimani is resentful. He is quite bitter about his president and what he faced as an individual for losing his daughter. Look at language and stylistic devices. We have a lot of rhetorical questions. If you look at page 102, you realize that we are given questions such as, given the unavoidable nature of their causes, were they not losses the Kenyan government could have prevented, but had not? So that's Kimani asking. Now we have another question about, after years of misrule, Zimbabwe now was taken back to the Stone Age. Had the man not taken it there, that is page 103. Now we have another question. How would we have failed to see the marvel engineer Tahir, that by so doing he was throwing away the country's only insurance against the future Western attacks and signing his own death warrant in bargain? 104. We have a lot of imagery, and I normally talk about imagery and figurative language because many students don't understand what it is. Now, when you look in this book, you will see some similes, you will see some metaphors, vivid description, and hyperbole. Now, in simile, page 104 has a simile such as, the man used to snap at the West Hills like a terrier. Then you look at a metaphor on page 104, you will see, but he was now a poodle, a dog that can be reared. Then vivid description, we are given a clear picture of the Nigerian president. He was looking more majestic in the sky blue robe, page 101. We are also told that the Libyan president has eyes that flashed flare of iron with the flame in the soul. Hyperbole, we are told by the Libyan president, is described in the eyes as flashed flares of iron that flamed in his soul. That is an exaggeration of actually how he looked like. Then we have flashback. Flashback comes where we have to understand how the Zimbabwean ruler did in his country, rebuking the Americans and Britain loudly to the devastation until the bomb came about. That's when he had to change his idea about the weapons. 102. We also brought into a flashback of how Comrade Melusi lost his family because of his president, and how he sent the 5th Brigade to murder about hundreds of people, including the wife of Comrade Melusi. That's page 103. We also see that the author reminds us about how Tuni had died in an accident where the Kenyan president would not help. We have juxtaposition and contrast. The man used to snap the Western Hills like a terrier, but now he was just a poodle. So we have a juxtaposition of the terrier and the poodle. if you know what the two mean. Then finally we have onomatopoeia. In onomatopoeia we have page 100 and 104, the word snap and snap. So thank you for listening to me while we are talking about this chapter. It's a short one, unlike the rest, and I believe that if you really are free to talk about this book, Fathers of Nation, it will be of great interest. Also, I welcome you to subscribe to this channel so that we have continuous educational talks about the books that are ongoing. I really also wish to have more viewers so that we build the academic aspect. Thank you and bye bye. Next time we'll be talking about the next chapter. So feel free, and if you have questions about Fathers of Nations, we are welcome on board, whether they are contextual questions or essay questions.